Doing a quick recap of what we just said is that we are talking about fulfilling the mitzvot, the commandments on Seder night. We have a biblical commandment to eat matzah. We have a biblical commandment to eat maror, but nowadays it's rabbinic because it's only biblical when we eat it with the paschal lamb, with the korban pesach. We have a mitzvah to tell the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. We have a mitzvah of Hallel. We have a mitzvah of drinking 4 cups of wine. Some are rabbinic, some are biblical. We're focusing on the biblical mitzvah of telling the story. Only matzah on Seder night, I think it's only eating matzah and telling the story that are biblical nowadays. So lahagid, to tell, magid is the person who tells or the act of telling. Haggadah is a compendium of things that you say or you tell. That's what the Haggadah means. And we know, just one second, and this goes to what Karol Lashinsky said. The Netziv, people here heard of the Netziv? Rav Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin. He was really a renowned 19th century scholar. And he says, I just want to quote him, "It is miraculous that a nation that was once so oppressed, unfortunately a little bit today as well, burdened under the weight of bricks and mortar, can emerge, tell their story with clarity and wisdom. The telling of the story is a sign that the teller has become a better person, capable of perspective and of sharing an experience with others." And we are celebrating here the power of speech, because the power of speech was in exile when the people of Israel were in Egypt. The redemption allowed us to speak freely once again. And that's why the word Pesach, there's a hint in it. It means to jump over. It also can be divided into 2 words, Pesach. Pe is mouth, sach means having a conversation. So it hints at the mouth that speaks. Passover is a celebration of our ability to delve into our ancient stories and find new meanings, each year considering the tale with fresh eyes. Okay, we read, we reread, we interpret, we reinterpret. I want to bring you 2, for me, fresh interpretations of things that we've said many times, and I want to share them with you. Ellen, did you have a question?
One of them, the telling of the story, but the other part of that I always thought was the reenactment, and there's a difference. And so the eating of the matzah would be part of the reenactment and not just of the telling.
So let me, I think this might be, that's beautiful. Thank you. As a matter of fact, there are families, there are traditions where they literally put dough, or not dough, matzah on their necks, and they gird their loins with something. I don't know what that means, put a belt on. They take their staff and they literally walk around the table. There are people that do that, but so I think maybe a different way to look at it is, and I think it's the Rambam who says to do that, which is more of a Sephardic custom, but anybody could do it. And I think it's a beautiful custom. I say that's one way of fulfilling the mitzvah of telling the story, right? There are many ways to do it. You could put on a play, you could sing a song, you could tell the words in the Haggadah, you could do midrashic interpretations. Every year we do something else. One year, I've often told the story, the first year of COVID was the first year that I had celebrated Pesach with my husband. We've been married 4.5 years. And you remember COVID was the rabbis were really stretched to try to fulfill, to fulfill people's needs. And I literally got to the night of Seder. Everybody had Seder by themselves that year. And I was just like done. Like I just had nothing in me to teach for the 2 of us. And he took it over and he taught me things that I didn't know from an artistic perspective. He had all these books and beautiful illustrations of the 4 sons, even sometimes 4 daughters. And he showed me what it looked like throughout the ages. And that showed a different perspective because it showed how we had freedom throughout the ages. So you could do it from artistic, historical, archaeological, midrashic, exegesis, taking the text. They all work, as well as what Ellen suggested, doing a reenactment. But I wouldn't say that there's a mitzvah to reenact. That's the part. But I agree that part of the words that we have in the Haggadah is that we have to see keilu hotzi et atzmo, like it's that you have to feel that you have left Mitzrayim. So one thing that can help is if you put on kind of a play. But I want to say there are probably other people like, okay, I didn't really leave Mitzrayim. So, am I really feeling that I left Mitzrayim? No, but maybe they find other ways. So I want to show you maybe two different ways that we could enter into the Haggadah from what, for me, are new interpretations. And I hope that they will resonate with you. One of them is historical. It's about the building of the Haggadah. The Haggadah is actually a compendium of layers. It wasn't like, there is somebody called Baal HaHaggadah, the person who wrote it, but it's not like, a Stephen King novel where he sat down and wrote the whole novel. It's, or I don't know, more contemporary, somebody can throw it, a more contemporary author. It's not that somebody sat down, it's that over the ages, the Haggadah grew and changed and incorporated different passages, different interpretations that were added over the years. It actually has layers. So one of the things I'm bringing is about looking backwards and to see where one of our tried and true traditions came about. Where did it come from? What was the source? I never knew it. And that'll be the second thing. The first thing is a reinterpretation of the 4 Lishonot Geula, the 4 phrases of being saved. Is anybody familiar that the 4 cups of wine, everybody here know we drink 4 cups of wine at the Seder? That's a rabbinic obligation. We're talking about a mitzvah. There's a rabbinic fulfillment of the mitzvah by drinking 4 cups of wine or grape juice or whatever it is that you are able to drink. So we attach them to 4 different ways that God said God took us out of Egypt. People familiar? Is that ringing any bell with anybody? Give me a thumbs up, somebody. Okay, great. Now I'm going to show you where that source is from. I will make it bigger. Give me a moment. All right. People are able to see this now?
Yes.
Is that a good size? Great, great. If we look in the Torah, remember that when we speak about the leaving Egypt, when we talk about it, before Yetziat Mitzrayim, I just want to ask people, if you don't mind, to please mute if you're not speaking. If you want to speak, no problem. But if you're not speaking, please mute. And the Baal Haggadah, or whoever, the Talmudists, noticed something interesting about these verses in Shemot. These verses, the Torah is generally very terse. Well, sometimes it is terse, but it doesn't use extra words. That's something that we believe, that if the Torah spent time on extra words, there's always a reason for it. So our Talmudic sages looked for a reason as to why in these psukim here, God uses so many different ways to say that God saved us from Egypt. So this is something that Moses is telling Bnei Israel. God tells Moshe, you tell Bnei Israel, the Israelites that are in Egypt, tell them this. Ani Hashem, I am God, v'hotzeiti etchem, and I will bring you out, I will bring you out, mitachat sivlot Mitzrayim, bring you out from under the either suffering or burdens of the Egyptian. I would say the suffering caused by the Egyptian, burden caused by the Egyptians. So that's one. The second is v'hitzalti etchem me'avodatam. And so we're using, because they're all similar words, the translation uses 4 different words. I will deliver you from avodatam. So it's from their labor, but it's their slave labor. So here it's translated as bondage, because an eved is a slave. So that's bondage. And I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. Uvishfatim dolim, and with great judgments from the, I guess by judging the Egyptians and bringing the makot, bringing the plagues. And lastly, v'lakachti etchem li la'am, and I will be taking you to me to be a people, meaning a nation, I'm just rewriting the translation from Sparia. And I will be to you a God, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from under the suffering of the Egyptians. Okay, as is familiar to people. These are psukim. So the Midrash or the Gemara brings a Midrashic interpretation and says, wait a minute, why did God need to tell us 4 different ways? That must be important. Because it's important, therefore, we're going to attach importance to it on the night of the Seder, when we're telling the story. And Ellen, this is another way to reenact it. In other words, drinking wine by itself doesn't reenact leaving Egypt. I don't think they took wine with them necessarily. But if we attach importance to each one of the 4 cups, and we say each one of these 4 cups actually is one of the ways that God saved us, that also brings to the forefront of our, our brain, our cerebral frontal cortex, it's that God saved us in 4 different ways. So one is the Yerushalmi. By the way, you know that there's a Talmud Bavli, Babylonian Talmud, and the Yerushalmi, what we call the Palestinian or Jerusalem Talmud. And the Jerusalem Talmud says this, Minayin l'arba kosot, where do we know that we should have 4 kosot? It's according to this, it's not that the 4 cups were first instituted and then attached to them these four different lishonot geula, these 4 different ways of saying God saved us. Rather, Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rav Benaya, the name of Rav said what? Rav Benaya said, corresponding 4 expressions of salvation. Therefore, what are they? And here he quotes it and says, Vehotseti, vehitzalti, vega'alti, velakachti. I will bring you out, I will rescue you, I will save you, and I will take you. Okay. Is everybody, I want to make sure before I go to the new interpretation or newer interpretation. Hello, iPad number 5. Welcome, whatever your name is. Nice to have you here. Everybody got that? 4 cups of wine, 4 lishonot geula, 4 different expressions, ways of salvation. Any question on that part? Yes, Moshe.
I always thought it was supposed to be, for the 4 corners of the earth, that Hashem will redeem us.
I haven't heard that, but it sounds nice. I mean,
What?
there's a pasuk, ufaratza. Sorry, we have that pasuk, but I've never heard that interpretation. I think it's also beautiful. If you could show me a source, that would be awesome. Maybe you'll find one. Moshe's very good at research. Whenever he asks me questions and I don't know the answer, I just flip it back to him. I'm like, go for it. Go research it.
And also, isn't there 4 galuts, so there's only 3
Galut, you mean exiles?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. That's a whole different, how do you count the exiles? So.
Also, that's what I thought.
Oh, so you're saying that, in other words, Egypt, Rome, or whatever, that God saved us 4 different times? That could be as well. Although honestly, if you look at how many there were in Europe, there were so many. I saw a screen. There were 800 over the course of like 800 years, 800 places of pogrom and exile for the Jews. The Inquisition, there's so many. Unless you counted maybe only exile from Israel, I don't know. So, okay. All right, so now I'm going to give you a slightly different interpretation. I heard this from a rabbi in New Jersey when I was there for a Pesach one year, pre-Pesach. And he says like this, we have another teaching. The teaching is from Masechet Sota. This is from the Babylonian Talmud, like that. Babylonian Talmud. Sotas. And it says like this, Darash Rav Avira taught, Bishar nashim tzidkaniyot shehayu ba'oto hador nig'alu Yisrael mimitzrayim. In the merit of the righteous women that were in that generation, the Jewish people were redeemed from Egypt. Now, has anybody ever heard this teaching before? Bishut nashim tzidkaniyot, or bishar. Some people say in the reward, some people say merit. Yes, somebody say something? Candace, you say you've heard it. So let's start counting. The women. Yeah, go on. Moshe, do you want to say something?
No, I wanted to say it was, that when Pharaoh made a decree not to have, to throw all the males into the river because according to his astrologers or magician, that he knew that a male savior is going to save the Jews.
Mhm.
And, the men said, okay, we won't have any sex, but the women said, they're not gonna have they're not gonna cohabitate, but the women said, no, you are.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. We'll get to that also. Great. So it's all the Jewish women. That's a general thing. And now let's go to specific Jewish women who happen, there aren't that many women mentioned in the Chumash. But these parshiot at the beginning of Shmot have almost all not all of them, but a lot of them concentrated, and they're very active. They really do things. So Candace, what's a woman who
Miriam,
said this? Miriam, Moshe's
Miriam,
sister.
Shifra
Miriam.
and Pua.
Shifra and Puah, who are the names of the midwives. So when Paro said to the midwives, remember he calls them in and he says to them, make sure you kill the baby boys. Same thing for the midrash that Moshe was saying. That's what it's based on, that midrash. There are other ways to explain it, but that a male Jewish boy would kill him. He could also say, well, they're the ones who are the soldiers, so I want to kill them for that reason. Rabbanit Leah Sarna brought a completely different teaching this year, that this way, why keep the girls? Why not just kill all the boys and girls? That the girls were actually used as, either sex slaves or as to be nursing machines for Egyptian women, for Egyptian babies. So that's another way of understanding it. All very difficult. But the midwives were some of Shifra and Puah. Not everybody says they're Miriam and her mother Yocheved. Some say that they were Egyptian midwives. Whoever they were, or any Jewish women, they were instrumental in saving Jewish babies. Who else? Anybody else? A different one. Wait, let's see Moshe, but if anybody else. Felice. You're muted, Felice. Okay, if you're able to unmute, great. No, not able to.
And
Okay,
now
yes,
it's
Felice.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Batya, I was thinking of,
Good, Batya, the daughter of
who
Paro.
saved Moshe.
Excellent. Great, great. Anybody else? I think there's one more. Yes, Arnie.
Zipporah and Elisheva,
Elisheva. Who's Elisheva?
Aaron's wife.
So I don't know if she's specifically in the Torah.
No,
Did she do
not
an act? Right. I mean, she might have done something, but
in the
Torah,
midrash. There's a midrash
that
that,
is a midrash. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, great.
she gave
And
birth.
what about Sipporah? Did you want to add Sipporah, Janet?
No, I was gonna add about Sarah Bat Asher, who took Joseph's
Oh, nice.
bones.
Yeah. She didn't take the bones. She told.
Well, she told them where they were. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Beautiful, beautiful. Very nice. Arnie, do you know what
Gosh.
Sipporah did that was so important?
Well, she circumcised their child.
Nice. Fantastic. Okay, guys. Great, great. Now that you gave me all the back, Moshe, did you have something to add or is that it?
Who's the one who gave, I never heard that one, the one who gave Moses where Joseph Bones, what was her
Oh,
name?
Serach Bat Asher. We can't talk about it now, but it is,
No,
I give a
it's-
whole
it's-
shiur on that one. That's a midrash that says that Serach Bat Asher, the daughter of Asher, told Moshe where the bones were. Because remember, Moshe took the bones from bones of Joseph. Joseph asked to have him be buried in Israel. So, but let's save that for another shiur. I'll do that another time. Okay, so now let's go inside and see how Rabbi Wiener, who is Rabbi in Rinat Yisrael in Teaneck, he says, let's look at these 4 Lashonot Geula that we just spoke about and use them as kind of a mnemonic to remind ourselves of the women who were instrumental in saving the Jews, the Israelites in Egypt. Vehotzeti, remember that was the first one. And I'm using Sforno. Sforno was one of our classic commentaries. I'm using Sforno's interpretation, the classic interpretation, and comparing it to the woman. You see, that's what I have here in the file. Vehotzeti. So what does Sforno say? Vehotzeti, it says that in the Pasuk, I will take you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. Remember, we just read that. There will be an immediate cessation of the Israelites performing slave labor for the Egyptians, right? The second you take the slaves out, they're not doing that anymore. But Rabbi Wiener says, I will take you out. The daughter of Paro took baby Moshe out of the Nile River and saved his life. Huh? Isn't that nice? I'm just going to read you the pasuk. Remember, Yocheved puts Moshe in a basket. Miriam watches from
Watches.
afar. Yeah, not washes. Watches, thank you. Watches from afar. And she notices that, and why did Yocheved do that? Because she was afraid they would kill Moshe, her baby. But Tered bat Paro, and the daughter of Paro went down to have a bath. There's the washing part. And her maidens are walking there, but and she sees this ark, this little basket, betoch asuf, in the reeds. So she sent either her arm or her maidservant, and she took it out of the. It doesn't say the word vehotzeti, but he said, but isn't that what she did? She took baby Moshe out. This is a midrashic interpretation, but I thought it was so beautiful. So that's one. That's vehotzeti. Now let's go to vehitzalti. Vitzalti, and I will rescue you. On the day the Israelites will depart from Egypt, when they would cross the border out of the land of Egypt, that's when God saves, like literally taking them across the border. And here, when did Tzipporah save Moshe's life? In two ways. You could argue one of them is bringing him home from the well. Remember, he came to Midian when he fled Mitzrayim, and he was looked at as a stranger. He rolled the stone off, but he had no home. He had no place to be at. It probably was very dangerous then to just wander as a person, even a man, by yourself. So one could say bringing him home from the well. And when leaving Midian, she performed a Brit Milah on their son Eliezer. I want to read you those psukim as well. No, not there. It's over here. Vayhi baderech b'malon, and they were on the way, meaning Moshe, Tzipporah, and their children were with them on their way from Midian to back to Egypt, because Moshe was about to save the Jews. They're on the way in a malon is a hotel nowadays, but in some sort of inn or some encampment. Vayifgeshehu Hashem, and God met them, meaning an angel or the Lord. It's like somehow a fiery Lord here. Vayivakesh hamito, and God wanted to kill him, probably Moshe. And Tzipporah somehow knew that the problem was that they hadn't circumcised Eliezer, but tikach Tzipporah, so Tzipporah took tzor, a flint, v'tichrot orlat bena, she cut off her son's foreskin, v'tagal raglav, she touched his legs with it, v'tomer ki chatan damim atali, you are truly a bridegroom of blood to me. And what happened there is that, and that God let Moshe alone and was able to save Moshe's life, literally saved Moshe. I mean, Moshe was certainly at the center of taking Bnei Israel out of Egypt. So most of these stories, or a lot of these savings, actually have to do with Moshe, either Moshe being born or Moshe being saved at one point or another. Next, everybody good with that? Okay, Viga'alti. So again, this is Sforno's interpretation. On the day of the pursuing Egyptians would be drowned in the sea, on that day, the Lord orchestrated, Vayosh Hashem Bayomahu, God orchestrated salvation after the death of ones who enslaved the, is that the same word, to enslave and being enslaved? I guess the ones who are enslaved are obviously free. Okay? We'll do it that way. Okay. And where is Viga'alti? I will save you here. Miriam. So we have Tzipporah. We have Miriam. Miriam believed there would be Geula, salvation by God. We have the Midrash that Moshe quoted, that she, well, something similar, she convinced Amram to have another child. There's a Midrash about that. And what was the other thing? Dancing at the edge of the Yam Suf with the other women, using timbrels to take out with them from Egypt. So I wanted to tell you where that comes from. Where did those Midrashim come from? So at the edge of the Sea of Reeds, not the Red Sea, even though that's what it's called nowadays, the Yam Suf, what happens is they go through the Yam Suf, the Egyptians are all killed, and Moshe leads the nation, in song. And after it says, Vatikach Miriam HaNeviah, and Miriam the prophetess took. Which Miriam was this? Achot Aharon, the sister of Aaron, et atof biyada, the timbrel in her hand, and all the women went after her with their tupim, their timbrels, uvim cholot, and with dancing. So I just want to explain to you where this beautiful midrash comes from, these midrashim. First of all, why is she called Nevi'ah? It's the only place she's called a prophetess is here. Achot Aharon, why doesn't it say she's the sister of Moshe? She's the sister of Aharon and Moshe. So the midrash says, wait a minute, she must have been a Nevi'ah, a prophetess, when she was only Aharon's sister, before Moshe was born. And that's the midrash that says that she went to her father, based on what Moshe was saying, that the men of Israel separated from their wives and said, if we're going to kill our babies, our baby boys, why should we have sex? Why should we have children? And Miriam stands up to Amram, her father, and says, Paro only said the boys will be killed. You're not even allowing the girls to be born. This is where the midrash gets it from, or part of where the midrash. Because otherwise, why call Miriam a prophetess? But she somehow, at a young age of 5, knew that from Amram would come Moshe, a savior, her brother. And then it says, Batikachet atof, she took the timbrel. What do you mean the timbrel? So one way of understanding it, first of all, when you leave Egypt and you have pursuers and you say, okay, what would you take with you from Egypt? I'll take food. Okay, I'll take a sheet. I'll take, I don't know, I'll take diapers for my baby. I'll take food. Oh, and don't forget the timbrel. Like, why would you take a timbrel? Is that the first thing that would be on your list? It would be if you believed there would be salvation and you wanted to thank God. And that's Miriam, who believed that there would be salvation. And she got the women also to bring it because it says that they took timbrels. There was no timbrel stand in the desert saying, get your timbrels here, you can buy them for me. Or on the edge of the Yam Suf, there was no Bedouin timbrel stand selling them, I would imagine. But rather they took it with them from Egypt. So we have, was that all 4? Just checking.
I think you still have Vilakachti.
Vilakachti, thank you. I thought I had one more, thank you so much. We have the last one is Vilakachti, and I took, so this actually is the same word. It says, and this is the midrash that Moshe was referring to, but so it's part of it. Vayikach ish mi beit Levi. Wait, vayikach. One second. I have it right here. Vayelech ish mi beit Levi, and a man from the house of the Levite house, vayikach et bat Levi, and he took a Levite woman, and then she got pregnant and she had a baby. So there are 2 ways of understanding it. One is that Miriam convinced her father to have, to sleep with her mother. And the other one, the midrash, that the women, the Jewish women, would beautify themselves in their mirrors and entice their husbands to sleep with them in spite of their extreme exhaustion from being a slave and maybe from not willing to bring babies into the world. These mirrors were so holy and dear to God that they were used to create the basin in the tabernacle, the Mishkan, for washing the priest's feet and hands. And there was no dimension to the basin. Why? It had to be large enough to contain all the mirrors. So that's Vilakachti. Okay. Everybody good with this? Okay, got the women? And I can share the source sheet if you want. Let me share it right now so I don't forget.
Yeah, please share. That'd be
Let me share.
great.
Yeah, otherwise I can imagine I'll forget to share, and then, so I'll put it into the chat.
Rabbi Weiner is wonderful.
I think he is. I don't know him that
Wonderful.
well, but I
He's
was.
great. My mechutin is Rabbi Adler, so that's why.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Okay, let
Okay,
me.
I gotta go. Chag Sameach v'kasher.
Oh, do you want it, Karen? Do you want me to first give
Yes,
you the?
Helen
Okay.
can send it to me.
Oh,
Helen can
perfect.
send it
All
to
right,
me.
Chag Sameach, thank you so much for coming, Karen.
Okay.
All right, now let's go to the second text that I wanted to teach you, the second idea. This is about spilling the wine. Oh, so before I go to that, let me ask people, do people here spill the wine? Who spills wine and when? Janet, Faye, anybody want to say when you do it? Faye, you want to tell us when you do it? No, you have to unmute.
When we're reading the Aseret HaMakot.
Right, 10 times. I actually do it more than that. Does
13.
anybody do it more? You do
It's three-
13.
Right.
So I do it 16.
Wow.
So because I do it also with Dam Va'esh V'Timrot Ashan. And that's the three kinds of miracles, the blood, the fire, and smoke. I don't know why, but I mean, that's a whole other reason, which I won't go into. So some people do 10, some people do 13, some people do 16. Anybody, let's do a show of hands. I do 16. Anybody else? That's it, just me? That's so interesting. Okay, so some people do 10. Oh, you don't have permission. 1 second, Helen. I'll make permission. Okay, no problem. I'll give people permission. You're right. I did not give permission to do it. Let me do that now. There you go. Okay. Gave you permission. Okay. We're going to see where the source is. Remember what I told you? The Haggadah was something that was layers. So let's look at that and see what the, but everybody's familiar with it. Some people spill like this. Some people use a finger. Some people use a spoon. Anything else? Any other way of doing it? Anybody, does anybody here not have this tradition? So everybody has a tradition. So I've been told over the years the reasons for it are things like, well, when we're talking about the plagues, we want to spill out some wine because we don't want it to seem so joyful that our enemies are, we want to remember that they were people and we shouldn't be so joyful. Yeah, everybody should have permission now, Arnie. Can you try again? But if I have to put in, let me put a new, just in case, let me just, oh, other people are in, so you should be able to get in. Arnie, try again. Try again, see if you can. I fixed it after Helen sent me. If you can't get in, okay. So what I'm going to take you through is the source for why there are 16. I mean, they also reference that some people do 10, but I'm going to take you to the source of 16. Okay, I'm just going to show you where it is. I have a Haggadah here. It's before the Makot. Here, Biyad Chazara, it's at the end of the Midrash that explains all the different outstretched arm and, strong hand. And it says, what is the dam? Anyway, it says at the end, dam va'esh v'timrot ashan, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. And then it goes into the 10 plagues. So that would be 3. 10 plagues make it 13. And then Rabbi Yehuda hayanoten bem simanim, he gave an acronym, Ditzach, Adash, V'Achav, that would make it 16. That's how you get to 16. That's the most that people do. Everybody with me? But they're all about the different plagues and miracles that were done against the Egyptians. That's the setting for it. So now let's go to where was the first time it was done, because today we've lost the source of this. Rabbi Elazar of Worms, who was, I think I wrote here, oh no, I didn't write who he is, but anyway, he lived, I have more, you can look him up, I have it somewhere. He lived in the 12th and 13th century. And he said like this, so in his explanation of the Haggadah, he wrote like this, blood, fire, remember what I told you, 16. I started with blood, fire, and pillars of smoke. He writes that right here, it's the same wording, exactly the same. This is in the 11th and 12th century. It's really cool that we have this text from then. Blood, fire, pillars of smoke, 3. And then he goes through all the 10 plagues. Blood, frogs, lice, dam, tzvardea, kinim, etc., boils, hail, locusts, darkness, death of the firstborn. And then, ditzach, adash, v'achav, 16 terms. And he says for each of these terms, people put their finger, which probably meant the pointer finger, but after that, some suggest using a spoon, or just pouring a bit out to avoid making the wine pagum. Some people say that you can't drink from a cup where you put your finger in. So in my family, we don't do a finger, we do either spoon. But, everybody, you do according to your tradition, but, I'm just giving you some information. So 16, for each of these terms, people put their finger or spill out, sprinkle a drop. So I just love, look how many years we've been doing this. Imagine Jews doing it from the 11th century, at least the 11th century. He's recording it in the 11th century, which means it was from before, which is kind of awesome to think that Jews have been doing it for so many years. Like the fact that they've been saying the Haggadah is one thing, but the fact that they've been doing one of those little things that we just see as kind of a custom, to me was just amazing. It felt like we are literally drawing a line, from today all the way back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And he continues, this is the custom of our fathers. And this is what a different Rabbi Elazar, remember this is Rabbi Elazar of Worms, Hagadol, had his whole household. And that was the practice of his grandson, our own Rabbi Kalonimus and his family. That was the practice of Rabbi Elazar, the Chazan, and our Rabbi Samuel HaChassid. These are very important because he's saying these are the leaders of our community and they did it. And his son, et cetera, and my father and teacher. So, he's recording what he learned from his family, from his father. And we know that the Seder night is all about passing traditions down. What does he say? Here's the source. According to Rabbi Elazar of Worms, and most people hold that this is true. A drop of wine is sprinkled out 16. I want you, anybody who knows Hebrew, Yud Vav, the gematria of Yud and Vav is 10 and 6, which means 16. Now, in Hebrew, you don't say Yud Vav for 16. Who knows what you say in Hebrew?
Tet Zayin.
Zion.
Nice. Tet Zayin is 9 and 7, which also equals 16. Right? The gematria of Tet is 9, the gematria of Zayin is 7. Why don't we use Yud Vav? Because at some point people said, well, this is kind of like the name of God. It looks too much like the name of God, so we're going to switch. But here, remember, when did he live? In the 11th, 12th century. They hadn't switched yet, which is also kind of cool to see how history has played out. Sometime between the 12th century and, whenever, somebody switched it from Yud Vav to Tet Zayin. It corresponds to the sword of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, which had 16 edges. Well, that's interesting. I'd never heard of that before. And Janet, if Janet's still on, you may remember it because I learned about it last week when I went to the Leap Fellowship, and it was the first time I'd learned about it. It was just said sort of on the side by one of the presenters, and it was so interested me that I looked it up. So continuing, this is the source for it, and this is an even earlier midrash called Midrash Shochar Tov. I don't remember what that means, but it is a midrash of Tehillim, of the Psalms, which King David wrote, and it's even earlier. Let me just see if I wrote here when it was from. Midrash, it is from the, that makes no sense. It must be 1150. Yeah,
is
that
from
makes
the
Oh.
1804.
Thank you.
And in the table,
Who's speaking?
another key for the
Who's speaking? Oh, maybe not speaking to me. Okay. If you were, I'm happy to hear what you said. So this is a very early one. And what does it say in there? Okay. I want you to know, I went through the whole thing, and it turns out that they had miscalculated, they misrepresented, they kind of got things wrong with the words, but they piled one midrash on another to get to this end, which is so that the sword of God, as if, has 16 points or edges, whatever that means. A 16-dimensional, we live in 3-dimensional world. 4th dimension we say is time. How you get to 16, I don't know. Isaac ben Tradion, also known as Marion, said, the sword of the Holy One Bihi, Charbo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, yesh la 16 piot, has 16 edges, as it says in Ezekiel, be united, go to the right, turn left, whither are you bound? So here it's so interesting because some people say be united is 4, go to the right is 4, turn left is 4, whither are you bound is 4. But actually what they really do, whither are you bound, that word whither or where is ayeh. And this word ayeh has the gematria of 16. Why? Because it is Aleph is 1, Yud is 10, and Hey is 5. And that's how they got to it. Now remember, these are midrashim that want to learn this. If God's, wait 1 second. So I want to stay here for a moment. Everybody following this? So now can people, okay, I know we're almost out of time, but here's that connection. If we're saying the ways that God punished the Egyptians by dam, va'esh, v'timrot ashan, blood and fire and pillars of smoke, and then by the 10 plagues, and then again the plagues in shorthand form, so that the reason we're spilling out is to remember God's strength when God did it. It's a way of connecting it based on that 16. That feels very different from we're sad that our enemies are being killed. Just feels different, even though they both could be good midrashic interpretations. And then they try to kind of soften it by saying, well, if God's trait of punishment, which is limited, I don't know why, has 16 facets, then God's trait of beneficence, which is boundless, how much more must it have? So that's, the Midrash is trying to add something so we won't feel so bad about it. Okay, and then there's something so interesting. Rabbi Elazar of Worms continues, the custom of our Holy Father should not be ridiculed. Why do you think he would say that? Because somebody must have been ridiculing it. And so he's writing it down so that people will continue doing it, and people still do it to this day. Rabbi Shalom of Neustadt, another person, so he's in the 14th and 15th century, when he would say, blood, frogs, lice, meaning, that was just an example, the 3 of the plagues, he would put his pointer finger into the cup before him each time, and he told me that that's what the Ra'avia did. The Ra'avia was a very important commentary, lived in the previous century. When he would sprinkle with his finger each time, only a little bit out of the cup, and he said the reason appeared to him, it was implying that God would save us from all of these. For the 4 cups represent the saving of the Jews and the downfall of the Gentiles, and therefore he sprinkles some out with his finger, implying that we will be saved from these plagues, which will fall on the Gentiles' heads, which they did, at least the ones that we're saying, like the plagues. So that's, just wanted to bring you different interpretations of two accepted texts, interpretations of the texts, and offer you a slightly different perspective and a little more information that I had the zchut, the merit of, sitting and, oh, I know who that is over there. That's Valerie and Esther's mom in Canada. So nice to see you.
Can I just add something? I
Yes.
believe Camilla said she wanted to join in this project, and I wanted
Yes.
her information right now.
I can give, I
Helen.
can, get- I'll give it to Carmela.
Was
I-
it Camilla or Camilla?
Carmela said it, but I have Carmela's contact information, so I will give it to Carmela when I see it from the Bayit, or if you send it to
I'd
me.
like to get it right now, if possible.
So wait, not on the Zoom. So you
Not on the
guys can do it afterwards. Call each other.
Okay,
You have each other's
okay.
number?
Yeah,
Okay,
I gotta
great,
get
great.
permission from Carmela first to give out her contact
Yeah.
information.